We are going to, Be'ezus Hashem, today, in today's class, just do the text. Read from the text. For the last class was unusual that we only explain this chapter orally because of the revolutionary message of the Alter Rebbe. We took the time to how to deal with this practical dimension in our Avodas Hashem, or how to deal with this particular challenge which we have in our service to our Creator. So again, we tried to expound on this beautiful message of the Alter Rebbe. So therefore everything was done orally. So it's going to be less explaining or less expansion on the concept orally, and I invite everybody to go to the again, on this kosher tube on the right side you can tap in Tanya and you can see the previous class to get the gist of this chapter and its message. But because we didn't do the text, we're going to do today, and again, if you find it a bit brief, you may just look into the previous class. I will note that there is the TanyaOnline.com, the same classes with the text. I must admit that we didn't have the ability in the last few weeks to update due to the enormous responsibilities here at our organization, at our office, so we will look forward to do so at the first opportunity. Again, the advantages that we have of the text. In the meantime, to see the last few classes, and namely this last class which deals with this chapter, I invite you to go again, just type in Tanya, and you would be able to see the previous class. So Perek Chav Zayin, the beginning of the chapter, Chav Zayin v'im ha'atzus ein midaigas avenis. If the sadness and melancholy is not from worries and preoccupations of sins of the past, which we dealt with in the previous chapter, and in this context of this class it was 2 weeks ago, to the class one before, the two before this class. Not something of worries of sins of the past, but rather of the enormous anxiety which can occur to an Eved Hashem, someone who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is every year v'amich kulam tzadikim, that person wants to make sure that his actions, speech, and thought are completely aligned with the way Hashem wants a person to do, speak, and think. But he feels that he's challenged, and it could become really challenging and tormenting for that matter. We'd even use that word when it comes to controlling one's thoughts. You're dealing with very subtle and sensitive areas in the person's system, that when it comes, for example, to not to speak something, and sometimes we have a taiva, we have a lust, a temptation not to speak something which we're prohibited to speak, but at least I know I could forcefully close my mouth. It's a juicy piece of lashon hara that I'm so tempted to say in front of these people, which would all laugh out together, or as an example. So there is a temptation coming from the Yetzer Hara, from the Nefesh HaMavis, but I can at least close my mouth forcefully. When it comes to thought, thought, you can't just switch off thought. Thought is meshetetes tamid, is the expression. It constantly flows, and how can I keep my mind and my thoughts completely pure and clean, the way Hashem wants the person's machshavas to be? And it's again, as we mentioned in the past a few times, and the last week again, we emphasize this pasuk. The Torah says, it's not just a suggestible idea that our thoughts should also be aligned with the Ratzon Hashem, what Hashem wants the Yid to think, or Chas v'Shalom to stay away from thoughts which he is prohibited to entertain his mind with. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. And a kosher Yid wants to make sure, like everything else, if he has a kosher lulav and esrog, and he puts on tefillin, he doesn't work on Shabbos, he wants to make sure that this, in other words, he knows the same God which told us that we have to fast in Kippur and not work on Shabbos, told us that we have to make sure that we do not think this which we're prohibited to think about. And because it's such a sensitive battle, one could fall into, again, atzvos, a state of melancholy, of this challenge, of this enormous challenge when it comes to maintaining a pure thought. And again, back to again, we decide we're not going to go on and elaborate over here what perspective the Alter Rebbe is saying this, but I have to just throw this in again once again, because the Alter Rebbe is telling us that a person has to serve based on what he says in this 26th chapter, that it's so crucial and essential in order for the person to triumph over these Yetzer Hara, over his animal soul, over his Yetzer Hara. He must stand in this battle with with joy and gladness of heart, an uplifted spirit. And again, it's not just a suggestion, but this is it's crucial, and it's and it's necessary, and it's essential that a person stands with an uplifted, positive spirit in order for him to literally win these wars and these challenges and overcome these obstacles. So when it comes to Hirhurim, he feels the challenge is so great and so tantalizing, and from this itself he could fall into a state of atzrus, a state of melancholy, which this in itself is a cause for him to lose the next upcoming battle. We see our next upcoming battle, as we all know it. It's not in a week, a day, an hour, a minute. It could be in the next few seconds or next few milliseconds. So what does he do about it? So the Rebbe says, let's put it in perspective. Again, we elaborated on this last week. Which again, invite you to go to to get clarity, in order to get clarity in the message over here to the last week's class, because we're going to try to stick to the text this week. So we go on in the text. So the Rebbe says, look, it goes like this: if these thoughts fall into your mind, which you have to battle against, but these inappropriate thoughts would fall into your mind, not when you're davening and learning Torah. For we're going to notice that the Rebbe is going to separately explain us or suggest us in this beautiful manual what to do when these thoughts fall into our minds, into our minds as we daven and we learn Torah, this is in the 28th chapter, the next chapter. So the Rebbe says, in this chapter we're going to deal with that these thoughts fall into one's mind not when he's serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he's involved in worldly affairs, anything out of the borders of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. So when he's involved naturally in a kosher way, he's out in his business, or he's out driving, whatever any other occupation, or at least something which is on the surface not perfectly aligned with learning and davening, or not directly associated with learning Torah and davening. This is when a person is out there, is engaged in his engagement in worldly affairs, naturally based on Shulchan Aruch, or Kahai Gavni, anything simple. And in those times, in those opportune periods, these thoughts enter into his mind. Sometimes it just comes into his mind based on, again, the way Hashem, the way there is the Yetzer Hara comes in so innately when it comes to these, when he presents these thoughts. Again, this is part of the minu'urav, like the pasuk says. In other words, the way man is the Yetzer Hara in where he presents his presentation, and in this case, with inappropriate thoughts, the Yetzer Hara comes in a way like this is the natural me, perhaps, that I'm inclined and have a lust and temptation to chas v'shalom think something which is inappropriate, or, and this is what I'm getting at, some of these things come into my face. Driving down the street, inappropriate billboard, to be explicit, and not to shun away from anything which is not, we don't have to hide, we don't have to avoid dealing with realities head on. And that's why we're comfortable saying clear explanation, clear illustrations. Billboard which is inappropriate to look at, which the message enters into my mind, and it can trigger my thoughts to think this which Torah prohibits me to think about. And again, these are thoughts which one is not allowed to entertain his mind with. What is he supposed to do? And this could bring a person into a state of atzvos. So Alter Rebbe gives a suggestion. He says, put things in perspective. He says, quite on the contrary. You're not a tzaddik. You have this animal soul. And this animal soul, because you're not the tzaddik, you have not transformed this animal soul to be completely, like it says in the pasuk, we have to try to establish this within our, we ought to try that our Yetzer Hara should be also aligned with the Avas Hashem, with love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is our strive, this is our aspiration. But this is classically the tzaddik, which, as it says by Avraham Avinu, Matzasus Levavinam Lefanecha, he transformed his entire Yetzer Hara to be like a Yetzer Tov, like it says Lashon and Zeir, Kima Yetzer Tov Mamash, to be Mamash like a Yetzer Tov. But in this case, you're not that tzaddik which has transformed the Yetzer Hara to be like the Yetzer Tov. You have a Yetzer Hara because you're the Beinani. And therefore, put things in perspective. Don't allow yourself to fall prey to not only to these thoughts or to the sadness, to this melancholy state, and saying, how is it that these thoughts came to my mind? Quite on the contrary, put it in perspective that you're a Beinani, and you're a Beinani meaning to say that even though you're one who never violates Hashem's Ratzeh, and more so you're always aligned, and again in the negative, in the Sur Meirah, in the 365 mitzvahs leisese, and also in the positive, you're 100% aligned with Hashem's Ratzon and Hashem's desire in action, speech, and in thought. But yet in the same token, you still have a Yetzer Hara which is constantly challenging you. So when you put things in that perspective, yes, you do have a Yetzer Hara, and these thoughts, things come to mind. So instead of being sad with this whole experience, quite on the contrary, Adrabah, be happy and be elated, because yeshli l'smeich bechelka, you could rejoice with your lot that despite that this can come into your mind, that this is what the person is more disturbed with, that how is it I was just in shul and I'm just loving Hashem and my whole life is Torah and mitzvahs and in passion in my Torah and mitzvahs and my love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my fear from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all of a sudden why is my challenge with this stuff, as we explained in detail last week? And that's what really bothers the person. So once you understand that you're going to be challenged with this, and it is going to fall into your mind, and because you're a Yetzer Hara, because you're not the tzaddik, you're the Beinani, so what are you going to do about it? Instead of feeling bad about it, that this is coming into your mind, be happy the fact that despite it came into your mind, Masiach Daita, you deturned your mind from it. And every time you deter your mind from it, instead of being sad about it, you should know you're Mekayim a mitzvah. When a person has once a year has the ability to take a beautiful esrog, the lulav and esrog, the arba minim, the 4 species, and make a bracha, he's elated, he's doing a mitzvah. He puts on tefillin, he's doing a mitzvah. He's keeping Shabbos, he's doing a mitzvah. A woman lights the Shabbos candle, she's doing a mitzvah, and this is a cause for joy and elation. And we have the ability to mekayim another mitzvah. And the mitzvah is, do not deviate, do not turn your hearts, or go after your hearts, rather. Do not go after your hearts, after your eyes. The Torah says that you're inclined to look after. And actually, you see the word Zaini Macharim, because the Torah is alluding to these inappropriate thoughts which come into a person's mind. So when you're Masiach Daita, you don't accept that thought, and you turn your eye away, or namely, you don't accept this, that it should not enter into your mind. You make sure that willingly you will not think about this which is prohibited to think. So you're mekayim a mitzvah. So it's another chance to do a mitzvah. It's like you're taking a little esrog every single second. Or how frequent these challenges come, and they do come very frequent, as we all know. But instead of feeling bad that it's coming, no, put things in perspective. You're a Beinani, you have the Yetzer Hara, and therefore it's a chance for you to become another mitzvah, and another mitzvah, and another mitzvah, another mitzvah. And someone has all these chances to do mitzvahs, it is a cause for him to be sameach, to be rejoiceful, to be joyful, not chas v'shalom the opposite. How is it that how is it you're a Beinani, you're not a tzaddik? And therefore, when you put it in that perspective, you have the knowledge, you can make so many mitzvahs, it's a reason to be joyous, not chas v'shalom the other way around. As it says, the Lashon of the Gemara, Yasha, you're going to just quote this, it's a few lines down, that the Gemara says that someone sits and doesn't do Aveda, there's reward as well for you, as if you did a mitzvah. So besides the joy that you're doing a mitzvah, every moment that you don't accept this entertaining thought, this which again Torah says you're not allowed to entertain your mind with, you're doing a mitzvah, and therefore there's great reward for you. And if you had this challenge 100 times a day or 100,000 times a day, there's reward for you times 100,000, because you're mekayim a mitzvah. And when you put that in perspective, it's a reason to be joyful, not chas v'shalom sad. We will stop over here, even though I would have liked to go on with a text over here, but we'll leave that for the next because it flows in nicely into the next class. We look forward, Be'ezus Hashem, doing so. Have a great night and ultimately a great Shabbos.